bringing Russell Wilson to Tampa sounds like a good idea, but it's certainly not a cheap one. So what would it cost? That's a question we received from one member of Bucks Nation.
Hey, James and David, this is Ken Down out of Orinda, California again. It's a quick question. I am also in the camp of hoping for Russell Wilson, so I'm wondering what the Bucks would have to give up to get him, either draft picks and how much yearly salary it would garnish, and what it would cost us overall in the long term as well. All right, thanks, guys. Talk to you soon.
All right, Kendall, appreciate the voicemail and appreciate the question. This is something that we haven't really dove a lot into. Some of it's just because it is so fluid to a certain amount, but we can go ahead and dive into it here with Russell Wilson. So first and foremost, any team that has Russell Wilson, whether it's the Seattle Seahawks, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, or anybody else. I know the Washington Commanders are a team that are also kind of in the mix in that conversation as far as the rumor mill is concerned. Are going to have to deal with Russell Wilson, who's halfway through a 4-year contract right now, worth $140 million, with 70 of that guaranteed. That contract at the time when he signed it back in 2019 made him the highest player at the time in the National Football League. Now it pays him the fifth most in the National Football League. The current deal does include a $5 million roster bonus, which pays out on March 20th, 5 days into the new season, which starts March 16th. I think that's interesting because if you're the Seattle Seahawks and you're trading Russell Wilson, you'd probably rather do it before you have to pay out that $5 million and be on the hook for that versus doing it afterwards and being on the hook for the $5 million. That is kind of why those things are kind of put in there, is if a trade is going to happen, and it doesn't really force the hand because, $5 million at the grand scheme of things for a top tier quarterback, not the biggest thing to eat if you're going to have to, but it does kind of give the team a little bit of motivation to go ahead and get a deal done. Now, beyond that roster bonus, which the Buccaneers would pay again if they traded for him before the fifth day of the new league year, Wilson is also set to count for $37 million against the 2022 salary cap. I know that's going to raise some eyebrows. With just 2 years left, he would probably want a new deal, right? He probably wouldn't want to come into a new team only having those 2 years. He would probably want a little bit more of a commitment to him as a quarterback, to building the team into a champion. And he's got $77 million still due on his current deal. He's likely going to want somewhere around $40 million per year on average, turning 34 this season, which means a new deal, you're probably looking at about 5 years, which will take him to 38 years old. So that means you're adding 3 years, right? If those numbers all equate, you're adding 3 years. And if he asks for the $40 million, you're looking at about $123 million in new money. So that will net out to $40 million per year. Again, that money can be spread out. It can be tied to incentives. And maybe you add a sixth void year for good measure. We've seen the Buccaneers obviously do that recently, so you can spread the hit out. So even if he does come in asking for a new contract worth $40 million on average, that doesn't mean you're paying $40 million every single year. And again, that's probably what he's going to want. And that's just me speculating what he might want. Typically, quarterbacks, when you trade the capital that's needed to get him on your team, he feels like you believe he's going to take you somewhere. He wants to be compensated for that. So it's not necessarily what the Buccaneers are going to give him. And listen, money talks, but it talks in different tongues, right? So his current APY is $35 million. Maybe they stick to that APY, right? Maybe he averages per year $35 million, but the Buccaneers, in the years that they add on to his contract, maybe they guarantee more of it. So the current deal he's on, again, that he signed in 2019, only half of his current deal was guaranteed money. So if the Bucs extend him 3 more years at the same APY, so give him 3 more years, $35 million on average per year, but they guarantee 60% of that money instead of 50%, maybe Russ goes ahead and takes that. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't as well. Either way, it would benefit the Buccaneers and Wilson to work on an extension. So you're likely looking at a 4 to 5 year deal being done with Russell Wilson. Again, adding on 2 or 3 more years to the current contract once that trade goes down. So that's money. And honestly, money is fluid, which is why we don't get into a lot of these conversations because, his cap number could stay at 35 for the year. And next year it could be 5 or it could be 45. You know what I mean? Like these things are so fluid all the time. It's the per year cap hit, as far as that's concerned, is really not worth tying too many expectations to, because what it can look like year to year can change very, very rapidly. For example, a lot of some people are getting wrapped up, especially on Twitter, about this 35 million or so in cap space that the Buccaneers are expected to have in 2022 and all that, forgetting that the team can free up close to $60 million in additional space this year in just half a dozen simple contract restructures. Like nobody gets any less money. Nobody has to take a pay cut. Nobody gets cut and the Buccaneers could easily free up $60 million. Now, they're not going to do that unless they have to, right? But we've all heard of it. Mike Evans has done restructures to free up cap space. Ali Marpet has done it. I mean, and these are guys. Mike Evans is actually one of those guys that if he did it again, could free up, I think, about $7 or $8 million, according to Over the Cap, if I remember correctly. And remember, any new deal for Wilson and a new contract for Chris Godwin or a new contract for Carlton Davis or anybody else, it doesn't require a lot of upfront money. Again, the way that the cap allows, the NFL allows these teams to spread money out. It's the reason the Saints are currently $170 million over the salary cap, but they're not having a fire sale getting rid of every big contract they have because they're going to be able to make it work. Trust me. Don't try not to get too wrapped up into cap numbers. I think that's about reflective of what you might be expecting to see or hear from the team if Russell Wilson does join on from a contract number. But again, the year-to-year cap hit and how much actually counts and how much doesn't and all this stuff, it's all very fluid and can change year to year very, very easily. Now, something you can't really tinker with and spread out draft picks, right? A first-round pick is a first-round pick. You can't trade a first-round pick to Seattle and then say, you know what, let's restructure that. We'll give you 7 seventh-round picks for the next 7 years instead of 1 first-round pick. Like, you can't, that'd be cool, but you can't really do that. So back in 2021's offseason, right? So the offseason previous to this season, reportedly, right? So I don't know how confirmed it is, but I did see a report that the Chicago Bears actually offered the Seattle Seahawks 3 first-round picks, a third-round pick, and 2 starters. Now, I don't know who those starters are, but 2 starting players from the roster. Again, this back in the 2021 offseason, the Seattle Seahawks did not take that deal, choosing to stick with Russell Wilson. Things have gone a little bit south since then. Some injuries, some missed games, a year older. But I think that's probably a decent mark. I think, 3 first-round picks, 2 third-round picks is probably what you're looking for from a guy to get a guy like Russell Wilson. But again, you look at franchise quarterbacks, and you're not going to get the 5 years of the 4 or 5 years of performance out of a Kenny Pickett or a Malik Willis or a Desmond Ridder that you're going to get out of a Russell Wilson. Now, could you get better play 10 years from now out of a Kenny Pickett or a Malik Willis or a Desmond Ridder than you would out of Russell Wilson at 44 years old or whatever, 43 years old? Yeah, probably. But you don't make these trades necessarily for the long term. You make them for the short term. So that's kind of in a nutshell what it's probably going to cost to get a guy like Russell Wilson. Again, roughly, especially with those cap numbers and contract numbers, those things are so fluid, and the way they can create those things are so finicky that it's hard to really predict from a solidified standpoint. So all of that is just a projection, but something with Harden.